Welcome back to Biley Studios, everybody. I'm super excited to bring you another session in the From the Grave 3D Tumbler. Yes, we are sculpting a awesome 3D tumbler out of Sculpey Original, and this is where we are at this point. Now, we've already gone through two sessions previously, and those were partially done on TikTok Live. I kind of, finished it out a little bit between sessions, and this is session number 3. Now, this session I am mostly doing off camera. I did a little bit of it on camera later on in the process. So just be aware that later on you'll see me pop up on the TikTok Live in the background as we kind of finalize some of the details. Now, as you can see here, we've already got the cobblestone look effect on two sides of the gravestone. And we're going to go ahead and begin the process of working it onto that. Now, I had done a little bit of this work on TikTok Live and on session number 2. After we had blocked it in session number 1. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue this overall kind of texture, cobblestone effect onto the back of the tombstone here. Now I'm going to do it slightly different than what I did here, and then we're going to do something a little bit different on the front. So each side, apart from the two sides, the left and the right, are going to be slightly different. I want to keep the overall same stone and mortar texture, but at the same time incorporate different shapes and elements and add it here and there and nothing there, here and there. I do plan to add some large skulls at the very bottom, and I do think I'm going to add an archway on the very front of the tumbler as well. But that will be a separate video. So just be aware that we're going to introduce some of those kind of features here and there, just to kind of like frame in particular areas of the gravestone, and just kind of break up the monotony of just having cobblestone all over the entire item. So here we are on the very back of the gravestone, and I'm really kind of deciding what I would like to do for this. I want to incorporate some different size gravestones as opposed to just keeping the same size. So before, what we do is we go ahead and apply little medallions of clay. I'll sculpt in a little bit more extra texture on top of those medallions. We'll kind of blend those into the background or the main blocked in clay texture before we even begin the addition of any kind of mortar texture, and that's like a stippling texture. I do think I want to incorporate some larger skulls at the bottom of the base on the back and the front, just to give it some variation in the skull size. And I think what we'll do is on the very back is just to kind of add something to the back, something kind of characteristic, whereas the front's going to have its own things later on in the series. That I want to incorporate a large skull, and that can also be kind of like a key, so that the topper that we make maybe later on in another session will fit adequately. So as you can see here, I do have my son off to the side, and he was able to help me assist in cutting out some of these little clay things. Now, of course, he's not using the X-Acto knife. He is actually using the lasagna press. Yes, he loves this thing so much, cranking that arm and smushing the clay. He absolutely loves this process, so I'm always going to try to engage him in the creation process when I make these. So what we'll see here is I'm just going to lay these out kind of sporadically, but kind of keep them neat and tidy. I want to make sure that they stay neat and tidy up against the corner joints there, where we kind of apply that kind of rectangular edging there. So I want to make sure that we have those kind of staying in place, and then we're going to do mortar texture and cobblestone between those two edges. That way we just get a lot of variation. And it kind of separates the sides from the back and the front. It makes it look a little bit more blocky. It makes it kind of look like it has more curvature than it really does, because the edging kind of goes up and then tapers out towards the top of the actual gravestone. And of course, we haven't made the topper yet, so once we do that, it'll kind of come along. It'll kind of blend all together, because it'll have like a gravestone-esque shape at the top of the item. But for now, this is what we're doing. So I wanted to kind of create just like a full-on video in a way of us just creating these cobblestone textures. And as you can see, I'm just kind of moving things around, deciding on where I want to put the cobblestones. I'm trying not to keep it just those 3 across, which I tend to do, making one on the side, 2 on the sides, and then 1 in the middle. I don't want to keep that same thing going. So I moved a few of those up, and we're going to roll out 2 large pieces of clay here. Well, medium size, I guess, compared to the one we're going to make here in a little while. And I'm going to go ahead and begin sculpting in some skulls. These 2 skulls at the very bottom are going to be substantially larger than the ones that we're making out of the cobblestone. But we'll go ahead and continue the cobblestone texture all the way up, and then we'll kind of begin the skull work. is a little bit of a process here, and because I am letting my son mush out that clay, it does take a few moments, but like I said, it's worth every minute that he's able to spend time with me in the studio. This is also something that he's able to do at his age, so it's really cool to be able to have fun with him in the studio. These are the moments that we're going to remember, right? All right, so here we are. I got a large piece of clay here. I'm trying to kind of just get the overall general shape that I want. I really want to incorporate some type of Tim Burton-esque kind of style to it. And instead of making like a realistic skull where it's really kind of like cankered and rotted and cracked, I decided to go with more of a like a casted, cartoony, Tim Burton Nightmare Before Christmas type of skull. And the reason I say that is because it's really smooth, it's really elongated, it really doesn't have the overall shape and the structure that a real skull would have. And I'm completely cool with that. I just wanted to make sure that it has just some fun features on the back. And it kind of matches, in a way, the kind of like 2 eyes, nose, and a mouth structure that I've been using for the existing cobblestone. And it just really projects itself out quite a bit. Now, I made that flat originally, and then I decided to come in and add a little bit more so that skull type texture, or that rounded top, is a little bit more projected upward than it was previously. And that's where I got to thinking maybe that it could be like a key for the topper that we're going to put on top of the thing, whereas it'll only fit on one way, and it keeps us from putting it on the wrong way and then things not lining up. Because what we'll do is we'll bake this fully, and then we'll make the topper and we'll sit that down on top of this. So it'll make sense when it gets all said and done. But everything has its stages. Everything has to go through the right processes so that you get a nice uniform piece of artwork. There's a lot of ways to do it though, but this is just the way that I prefer to do it. So we're going to go ahead and blend this into the top there, and then I'll begin texturing the skull itself, adding a little bit here and there around the nose, a little bit more around where the eyebrows would be, or the top bone of the eyes. And I'm also going to take quite a bit of way here, as you can see, around the jaw bones, or the cheekbones, and then the upper lip. And we'll kind of continuously push that down until we get the nice overall kind of shape of the skull that we would like. Again, I'll come in here in a moment and I'll apply some concrete texture to this. I want it to make it look like it was casted with the existing concrete. And what I'll also do is there's a gap between the clay that I've added here now and the existing cobblestone or concrete base that we've blocked in from previous stage or session number 1. So I'll fill that little crease in with some clay, and we'll also texture that so it looks like this was always with the existing gravestone. You can see I'm really pulling that down quite a bit, elongating the skull, elongating the mouth a little bit, and I want to make sure that the upper lip of that skull has a lot of texture. And as you can see, when I use the sandpaper here, it's very coarse sandpaper we used to apply concrete texture, that I'm going to really pull that down quite a bit. And it applies almost like a rippled lip texture to the stone, and it will look really cool when we come in and give it a lot of washes later on in later stages. So it's really turning out great, and I'm really excited with how it's looking so far. But go ahead and sit back and enjoy the music, guys, as we go ahead and finish out the skull here, and then we can move on to the next portion. As you can see here, we did jump over to where I'm on TikTok Live now. So some of that, as you can see, I did do off of TikTok Live. But then I was like, well, let me go ahead and jump on, I think it was during nap time or something like that. My daughter was beside me painting or sculpting or something. And I was like, let me go ahead and share this portion with you guys on TikTok. Now, if you are watching this on YouTube, you're able to see a majority of all of this content in its more full-length content session, but also a lot of it's time-lapse, so it's easier to consume. So if you want to see some of the techniques that I use, then you're able to utilize the sessions that I post here. Now, just be aware that these sessions are much more free-form than some of my other creation and tutorials. As you can see, I do not have a black background behind me. I have a lot of my just existing studio showing. And I know that can be distracting when we're looking at something that's being sculpted, but I think it's also very, I think it's just important just to understand that that not everything is made in just like a super ornate, professional grade setup studio or on a black backer. Sometimes we're just sitting here in the studio, just enjoying each other's company, just making something fun out of Sculpey Original, and that's this situation. I was really focused on giving you content, but at the same time enjoying the creation with those who follow me and really support my artwork, whether here on YouTube or on TikTok. And as my YouTube following grows here on YouTube, I will probably more than likely begin streaming here on YouTube as well. So just be aware if you're disappointed that I wasn't streaming on YouTube. I just don't have that following here yet, and majority of my followers or those who really enjoy my artwork are still on TikTok. So as people transition over and YouTube tends to grow, and I feel like that it has more monetary value for me to go live over here, then I will do so. But until then, I'm just going to go ahead and record for YouTube whilst also talking to those on TikTok. I hope that makes sense, guys. That's just kind of my viewpoint on the whole TikTok live and YouTube live and making content thing. I just believe that YouTube has more opportunities than TikTok in a lot of ways, but it doesn't mean I don't enjoy going live and talking to those who follow me over there as well. So as you can see here, I'm really starting to blend in the edges of the cobblestone here, and I'm just using a small silicone tip tool to do so. It is a little bit of a process, and there's nothing wrong with being quite rough with this, because it really doesn't matter. If you mess something up, you can just literally just apply a lot of pressure and mush it back where it belongs. And I do believe that I applied a little bit less of a projection of stone to the back as opposed to the side. You can really see the sides are quite brought forward. Now, I'm not going to say I don't add a lot of texture to these stones. I do. I come in with another layer of just rounded, flattened clay to apply a little bit of a raised texture to some of these. And now a very select few will have the actual skull sculpted texture that the sides do. And here in a moment, we're going to jump into the skulls on the very bottom of the gravestone here. And I will also make some of those for the very front as well, just so that the bottom of the gravestone has a little bit of variation. It has some different elements out on it, and it just also gives us an excuse to apply just a different size of skull to the overall sculpture. As you can see, I'm starting to really blend in some of those raised edges there, and you can really see that they do bring them forward quite a bit. I'm using the edge of the silicone tip tool to apply a lot of texture and a lot of divots to it, and then I'll kind of smooth them with the tip of my finger until I get the overall satisfied look that I'm looking for. I will also use the divoting tool or the embossing tool just to apply like a stippling texture in the mortar joints once we get done with this portion of the stage. And it's not like you can't come back later on in final details and apply more of this stippling or apply more raised edges to these stones. They're there for you whenever you're ready, or at least up until baking. So you can always come back and add more if you feel like it's out of place. Now that I think about it, it would probably be a good idea just to apply a little bit more raised stone texture up towards the bottom chin of the skull and maybe along the edges of the skull to make it look like that mortar had to be a little bit thicker around that skull to try to get it to stay in place during the mold or casting process of this concrete skull tombstone. Now my daughter is painting off to the side, as you can see there, so I'm bringing her paintbrushes forward, and I'm also getting her paints out while also talking to those on TikTok Live. If I recall correctly, the TikTok Tumblr ambassador was in my live at the time, and I was talking to him about how the best way to try to get people to transition from TikTok over to YouTube and grow that following even more with the existing followers that we have on TikTok. I know that people don't like to jump ship and come over to a different platform, and I kind of understand that, but we're trying to grow on all platforms, not just TikTok. So we were having a conversation about that, just trying to see, it's difficult getting people to jump over and come over here to YouTube sometimes. As you can see, I do a little bit of scraping on these little pieces of clay here. I really do have to file them down quite a bit just to kind of get them kind of smoothed out quite a bit. And then I can apply the final details to it. I'm also leaving these very rough. I don't want to apply too much detail to these. I want them to look like a stone texture. And the more I feel like of a texture I leave behind, the better. It makes it look like it's aged, it's chipped, it's worn out, and then anything that I do as far as dry brushing over this, when I get to that stage of the painting process, will just accentuate everything that I leave behind. So we're just going to get the general shape. We're going to kind of get like a skull-esque look to it. We're going to get the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and then kind of like taper the jawbone just a little bit. Blend the edges into the mortar seams, and then we're going to move on to the next stage. But we'll go ahead and do the next one here in a moment. I think I do it off camera if I recall. And then that way, because you don't have to sit through two different skulls back to back. And then there it is, magically completed, and we're also just applying final texture to the edges of the cobblestone. You can really see it's really coming along, you guys. I'm applying just striations to the tops of those stones, kind of smoothing things out here and there, and taking away where I would like to. Using the silicone tip tool just to kind of try to smooth a little bit of that skull out there. They really were a little bit rougher than I would like for them to be. And then we come along and we're going to apply even more raised edges to these cobblestones, and these will be the ones that actually are skulls. So we'll make skull indentions of eyes, nose, and mouth the same way we did on the sides, and these are going to be mirrored. And these are only there so that it feels like one continuous piece, as opposed to the side, the front and the back just having completely different sections, and they look completely different. Why is this one so smooth and flawless when the sides have skulls kind of sculpted into some of them? We want to make sure that it looks uniform, and then that way when you're looking at the sides, you're looking at the back, then and you look at the other portion of it, it looks like it's all one piece. Like, oh, that looks the same. You don't have to think about that. It just makes sense. Does it make sense? I hope it makes sense. All right, you guys. So now we're at the point now we're really starting to isolate the final details of this part. I'm applying a little bit more texture as far as meat to block in on the skull on the back of the cup here. And I'm going to blend that in with the silicone tip tool. And I'm going to take a little bit more away from the eyes, and then we're going to texture this before we finish up this portion of session number 3. And on session number 4, we'll be working on the front of the tumbler. And that will also have a slightly different texture. We're going to incorporate a little bit of the cobblestone features into that, but not an absolute ton. And we're also going to do it in a slightly different way. I was originally thinking about putting a large skull in the front as well, but I kind of reined that in a little bit, and we're going to do something slightly different. I want to incorporate a lot of different textures and overall shapeage into the actual gravestone, as much as I can get away with without making it look too basic or too fake and just too forced. I want it to look like it's one piece, but at the same time a lot of variations in the piece. So it'll have a lot for people to look at when they look at the project. Sculpting in those little skulls there into the back of those cobblestones right there. And then we're almost nearing the end of this portion of the video. If you haven't done so already, make sure you smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and let me know below in the comments, did you enjoy this process? Did you learn how to make cobblestone or a different type of texture than you've learned before? Or did you just simply enjoy the free form of this video? Do you like the more professional grade videos where I have a black background all fancy and clean like? Let me know in the comments what you guys like. I would like to adapt my channel to meet what you guys like to consume here on YouTube. Again, thank you for all you do, guys. I will see you in session number 4, where we'll be sculpting the detail work on the front of the gravestone. Otherwise, guys, I will catch you on the next awesome video. Later, dudes.